There we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Connecting Life podcast. I'm your host, Diana Boskma. I'm here to help you connect the dots of life so that you can live your best life in a healthy and fulfilling way. Today, I'm talking with Rachana Kashyap, who is an amazing life coach and part of my community. It's always fun to have her. Would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Diana. I love that introduction, first of all. Thank you. My name is Rachana Kashyap, and I am, living in San Jose, California, in the US. And I've been pursuing life coaching. That's what I do. And I grew up mostly in India, and I moved here when I was 22. Lived here for the last 7, 8 years, and that's about me. I live with my husband here.
Cool. Thank you. So, Rachel already touched a little bit on it. We will be talking about moving internationally because she's done it and I've done it. I've lived in the Netherlands, where I'm from, and in Switzerland, and now I'm living in the UK. You've lived in India, where you're from, and
Yes,
in the US now. Anything else? Or is that it?
that is it.
Okay. So, for me, moving internationally was pretty big because it means you pack everything up, you finish everything in the country you're from, and then you move to another country and you have to restart everything, even your mobile phone number, your telephone, everything, because you have
Hmm.
nothing. When I would move in the Netherlands, when I would stay in the same local area, I could take even my phone number with me, and my mobile phone number I never changed in the years that I lived there. But the moment you leave your country, you got to start over. So how has that experience been for you?
Wow, yeah. Moving internationally was a big change. And for me specifically, it was because I was going to study my higher education. I was going to do my master's in software engineering. That's how I ended up moving to America. I was a student. And how was that like? I think the preparation to do so started a couple of years in advance because there's a lot of tests to take. I know there's exams like GRE, there's TOEFL or IELTS, which is proving you can speak, write, read English. Um, and a lot of applications, writing your statement of purpose. Yeah, that itself, the preparation itself took a couple of years, as I remember it, and it was a lot. And the nerve-wracking thing of like, am I going to get into any college, which one will I get into, like that itself was interesting, and kind of it was exciting, but also like I have no idea what's going to happen. So that's how it started, the whole preparation. And when I actually got an admit and was like, okay, I'm going to get my visa, I'm going to move, that was scary, to say the least. It is. I think um, if you've never even visited a country before moving, you have no idea what to expect, and all you know is what you see on the television, what you see in movies. So, uh, what the good thing for me was that I had some of my own college mates or friends who had moved to America a few years before, or maybe it's the same university or different university. So they were a really good um, contact. I guess they were very helpful, resourceful, giving me tips. But bring this, don't bring this. You get this in America. Don't worry about packing that stuff up. Winter wear. Don't buy it anywhere in India. US has some really good stuff. For example, um, that was very instrumental, I think, in just feeling a little bit more secure during my move. Like, okay, I know somebody there, and they have lived there, and they have also lived in India, so they know what this is about. And um, and there were also a lot of like groups, student groups, from a university or on Facebook groups where people would have conversations, questions, lists. We had a ton of questions. Like, what about this? What about that? How do you sign up for a class? How do you find an apartment? Oh my God, that was the big one. Like finding a place to stay while you're in a different country. That was interesting.
Yeah.
But I think that support of the friends that I had, the communities that I was part of, really helped me in the initial move that I had. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean, there's so much I can talk about in terms of the move
Mm.
itself. Diana, you said I think you mentioned you moved to the UK from the Netherlands.
Yep.
How many years ago was that?
That was in 2005, January 2005, with 3 kids, a dog, rabbits. So yeah, it was this thing of packing everything up, but also trying to find a house from the Netherlands in the UK was quite a challenge because I didn't know anybody here. I'd never lived here either. I'd been in the UK. So my partner at the time, his job took him to the UK. So what I did was we drove. He had his motorbike, and I drove with him with a car with his stuff in there, and my youngest at the time, who was like a year old or something, not even something like that. Anyway, so I then went with the car with him to drop his computer and these kind of things off. So I drove over, dropped it off, spent the night, and just went back again because he needed the stuff. So I didn't really see much of the UK other than, oh, I was driving on the right side of the road. Oops, now I have to drive
Yeah.
on the left side of the road. That was a bit scary because coming off the boat and then having to drive left was, oof, that was a different experience. And
Yeah.
then it was driving all the way to where his room was and then back again um, the next day, which was quite a drive going with the boat. And then 6 months later, but within 6 months we had to move, so then we did. But it was searching for a house and having him look at the house. But that was also, he had to do that outside of working hours. So it was this whole thing of, I was at home in Holland online. So that was a really good thing that the internet was there, because that made it so much easier to
Right.
actually find a place to live that fit all of us. Because my mum initially also came with us because she didn't want to be without the grandkids. So we had a house full of people. And it was great. It was really good having my mum there because I knew nobody. So at least I had my mum and the kids. And then finding the shops and then also what I noticed was that the first months was really more holiday headspace than actually I've moved here. That only hit after about 6 months or so. I said, oh, I'm actually living here.
That is interesting. My God. You said you moved with 3 kids.
Yep.
You said, did you say rabbits?
Yeah. Couple of
How did
rabbits,
you
a
move
dog.
a rabbit with you?
So what we did was we got rid of the hutch in Holland, got a small travel hutch to bring that along,
Oh,
because
wow.
that's a possibility. And then what we also had was that the time between getting the dog, knowing that we were going to move, and the time that
Mhm.
we moved was not over 6 months. So the dog still had to go in quarantine for a short bit. I think 3 months, 2 months or something like that. I don't really know anymore. She hated it. That really, really traumatized her. But she was, other than that, okay. But that was really hard for her to have to go in quarantine just because she was short for a little while on the jabs that she needed to be able to move.
Do you
Yeah.
mean she needed to take some kind of vaccines before
Yes,
moving?
the rabies vaccine. So that's
Oh,
not a requirement in Holland, but to be able to move to the UK, it was a requirement. And I'd kept up to date with her jabs, but not well enough for the British rules. So the Dutch rules and the British rules are different, and that made it tricky at the time. I had to say, no, it's also expensive to do that. But yeah, we made it through. She came home. She was very happy to be home, and we could go
right.
visit her. So we did that 3 times a week because we didn't want her to be there on her own. That was just so sad. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. It's that one you have to research is what I'm understanding. Like before you move, you have to figure out the rules. Like you said, it's different in UK
Yep.
versus Holland.
Hmm.
Um, and for everyone, for you, for the pets, for your kids.
Yep.
Um, I'm thinking like schooling is also something. I don't know if your kids were what age they were when you
Hmm.
moved, but that's also like the research is like step number one, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I found a positive about the UK is that we could home educate. So that's what we decided to do, because my oldest was 10, the next one's 7, and I had a 1-year-old. And the 10-year-old, she was definitely not going to go back to school because she really
Mm.
didn't want to. So the 7-year-old then had the choices, and do you want to go to school here or not? And she had I don't understand the language, I'll stay home. And I found it really nice because it meant that we could do different languages, because between us, we have 3 languages, and I wanted to make sure that they knew all, not just English or Dutch, but
Oh,
also
yeah.
German. And that worked really well. And in the UK, there's also a ton of home education groups. So they could
Mm.
learn anything they wanted. They had, now it's even that you can do online classes. Back then you couldn't. Back then you had to go to the groups and do the classes there. But yeah, they had amazing groups. They had sports groups. They had ice skating groups. They had all sorts of academic groups. So yeah, it was pretty good. And that was really surprising because in Germany it's forbidden. In Holland it's really difficult to make yourself wiggle through the rules to be able to do it. And then in the UK there was the whole freedom thing. I said, yeah, you do that. Fun. Go
Ah,
ahead. Yeah, it was
that,
cool.
yeah, I've heard of that as well. Register um, in that city. I think you have to register either in the city or that state to be able to
Hmm.
move and rent a home.
Hmm.
That's some. I've not heard of that. I'm either in India or in the US. So if I move to the Europe, that I mean, if I move to Germany in specific, that would be an
Yeah, or
interest.
the Netherlands.
Or the
In the
Netherlands.
Netherlands, it
Yeah.
is as well. You have to, so you rent your house, then you get your contract, then you have to get a permit. That doesn't cost much. And then you also have to make sure you're registered at that address. And I
Wow.
live here. Here in the UK, that's just not a thing. There's no civil registry, which is quite interesting to see that whole difference. Is, oh, okay, what do I do then? Well, nothing. Because that was one of those things. I just said, do I need to do anything like that? Nope, we don't have that here. All right, cool.
I mean, that's convenient. I mean, one
Hmm.
less thing to worry about when you
Yep,
moved, right?
yep.
And how long have you lived in the UK, and what's your
So,
experience been like?
so I moved in 2005 and then moved back. No, then moved to, so in January 2005 to the UK, then moved to Switzerland in December 2008. So that was,
Mm.
about 4.5 years. Then 1.5 years later, back to the Netherlands, and then 4.5 years after that, back to UK. And so I've been
Ooh.
here now since 2014. I've done quite a few international moves. And the
Mm.
first one was with 3 kids. After that, it was with 4 kids, and
Okay.
always with a dog. Not always. So that when we moved to Switzerland, we had 1 rabbit. Yeah. And then when we moved from Switzerland to the Netherlands, we had 2. So that was it. Because Switzerland is not part of the EU, which the UK was every time I moved. So that made that
Right.
easy. That's now not anymore. But
Yeah.
when I moved, it was just moving goods, no problem. But when we moved to Switzerland, everything had to be declared.
Hmm.
So we had to make sure that we had everything that we owned in bigger things. We owned that for a while, because if it would be a new purchase, you would have to pay tax over it. Because we found that out when we moved from Switzerland to the Netherlands. Because one of my friends, she moved away, and her car, she had to say, I can't use it anymore because they were going to an Asian country. So their car had to stay behind because they're not going to move cars. Companies don't do that
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
could get another car in Asia. And
Sure.
actually, where they moved, there were not particularly good roads, so there was no point for them. Anyway, so then I ended up with that car, but that car was then, we didn't own it long enough, not over 6 months. We were like a month short or so. But that then meant that we had to pay import tax and all that, and we had to say, what on earth? And then our furniture was also at the moving company for a while longer, because they had to go through all of it to make sure that there were no other problems with it. And I thought, oh, I've never experienced that. So yeah, that was the moving between Switzerland. That was the first. Going in there, it was stuck at the border for a bit, and then going out, it was stuck at the border for a bit as well. And
Wow.
then, back to the UK, no problem. We just did that ourselves. We got a lorry, put all the stuff in, drove it over. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
yeah.
so many challenges, so many new things to figure out. And especially you've moved quite a bit. For me, it was
Yeah.
one move, and that itself felt like a lot. But also, I mean, I've moved within America,
Mm-hmm.
and even that is very different. Like moving between any two cities in the same country or coast to coast, East Coast versus West Coast. I've lived
Mm-hmm.
in both. That itself felt like a lot. And but like hearing you talk about moving so many countries, especially with dependents, like kids and pets. It's a whole other thing. I'm thinking I can't imagine if I had to move so many countries in a short period of time, uh, how that would have been.
I didn't think I didn't know ahead, which was good. Otherwise, I would have probably never done it.
Why did you
And
move?
career of my ex. Yeah,
Career, you said?
yeah, the
Okay.
career of my ex. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He's very specialized in what he does, and that
Mm.
makes international moving happening.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's been your
So
favorite country to live in so far?
the UK actually. Yeah.
Nice.
It's also the area where I live. It's really green. It's really beautiful. Lots of woods. We have a beautiful lake here. I've got quite some really nice friends as well, which is really good. What the interesting thing was is that I lived in the same area the first time. So when I came back, I was welcomed back. I said, "Oh, you're back again." That was just amazing, having these people
Yeah.
be there for me again. Yeah, it was really good. Because when I moved back to the Netherlands, I ended up in a completely different area. So that was also starting over. Even though it's a small country, it was starting over because I was over an hour away from where I used to be. And people just don't really travel that far in Holland. They just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
What's coming to me as you share that is that community is like the most important thing. That's the
it is. Yeah.
I mean, I've lived in like 5 or 6 different cities in America, and
Hmm.
the one I love the most is where I live right now, Bay Area, California.
Hmm.
The biggest reason being I have a community. I have
Yep,
family, I have
yep.
friends, old
Nice.
friends, new friends, colleagues, all sort of
Yeah.
people who have, built relationships with over the years, even before I
Hmm.
moved here.
Hmm.
Um, and my least favorite would be New York City, even though it was an awesome city to live in. I mean, I loved uh, the vibe there. There's so many cool things to do. I met a lot of nice people. My career started there, actually, my first job. But when I moved, it was, a city that was a stranger to me. Like I
Hmm.
had a few people I was acquainted with, but I didn't have like close friends, at least somebody I could meet in a regular basis or close enough that, hey, like let's hang out, and those kind of things. So
Hmm.
I love the city, but the lack of community is what makes me not want to live in a city where I don't know anyone. Um,
Yep.
I mean,
I get
it's
that.
still possible to live. You just need time to
Hmm.
meet people, build that friendship, build a community over years. It takes years to do that,
Yeah.
as I
I
understand.
found that the difficult part of Switzerland because it's much harder making friends there than it's ever been for me in Holland or in the UK. In the UK, it's been fairly easy because people are quite open to meeting new people, having conversations and stuff like that. But the Swiss are very reserved in that.
Mm,
So my only friends were people who were also, one from the US and another one from Canada. That was it. It was always people from other countries. It was not the Swiss themselves. And for me, it was important to actually make friends that were Swiss because I wanted to integrate. I didn't feel at home at
mm,
all. So for me, integration became a thing of I can't do this. And over time, I started seeing that certain things were really so. It's for me a very different country with the way they look at things. It's very old fashioned, and it wasn't for me. So at some point, I had to say no. I don't want to live here. So after a year of living there, I had to say I want to go. I don't want to live here anymore because I really do not like it. I don't think it's good for the kids.
mm.
It's not good for me. I can't build the social life that I want. It's
Right.
just not going to work. And also some of the really archaic rules. I just no, 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 no. I don't want my kids having to deal with that. So then I had to have a conversation with my ex, as in what we're going to do, because he felt at home there. He actually really liked it, and I can't do it. The kids were also not happy there, because between the lot of them, they had managed to make one friend in over a year, and that stayed that way. They never made more than one friend. Just the kids of my friends they played with and hung out with, but not anybody locally. It was just one girl, and we're still friends with her. The whole family's still friends with her because she's an amazing person.
Mm,
And so then it was this thing. I can't really get to the social life I want. It's just not working. I also struggled learning the languages. I'm fluent in German, but Swiss German is definitely a different language. So I
right.
really struggled with that because there's some certain words that are so different, and then it's a mix with French in here and there. So it was just, oh my God, I'm going crazy here. So yeah, then the conversation was, all right, what's next then? And so we moved back to the Netherlands because that was the option there was. So yeah, that was quite the journey. Learned a lot from it because there are a couple of things in Switzerland
Yeah,
that are amazing that I wish they would have everywhere in the world.
right.
But yeah,
What what did you learn? And you said you learned something from the movie, even though there were challenges and you had to move
yeah.
back and everything. What was your learning?
One of my things was is that before I struggled integrating, I had this thing, why don't they just integrate? Because I couldn't imagine it not being possible. And then I couldn't integrate in Switzerland. So, ooh, that was judgmental of me to say, why don't they just? It's going to be hard for some people and harder for some than for others. And, struggling with the language. I'd never had any difficulties learning a language until I lived in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Because English came easy to me, German came easy to me, and I know a bit of French. I find languages fun, and then there was Swiss German.
What does that mean?
It's just so different, and I struggled so much with it.
So is
It's
there a
it's
kind of German that Swiss people speak and that is not a
mm.
language that Germans from Germany
So
speak?
you have so you have German from Germany, and then you have Swiss German, but Swiss German is in every village different.
Okay.
So you have to speak the local dialect to fit in. So I lived near Bern City, and that has its specific dialect. When you go, like 2 villages further, that's a different dialect. And I struggled so much. I just couldn't manage. It was so difficult. And I found it really weird because being fluent in German, I thought it wouldn't be hard, but it was. It was really hard. And
Wow.
I definitely wanted to be able to speak the local language because that means you integrate more and you can make friends better. Just couldn't do it. So I
Yeah.
tried to go to some groups, but then when the other people at the group were talking together, I don't understand anything. And I thought, but I'm speaking German. How can I not understand this? I just couldn't.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
most important thing, to be able to communicate through a language that you both know. And
yeah,
yeah, that's a big thing, right? Especially within
mm,
Europe, so many languages. So every time you move, you need to learn, and also dialect specific.
mm,
I didn't realize, I didn't know that there were different dialects within Swiss. I'm familiar with that because I mean, I didn't have the challenge when I moved to US because I knew English already and I studied it all throughout as I grew up in school in
mhm,
India. But I've had the challenge within India, interestingly, which is
mm,
because I, I I don't know how many languages are there. There are probably hundreds of languages in India,
yeah,
and probably even more, like twice or thrice amount of dialects. But there's probably like a few most commonly spoken language, maybe like 10 or 12, maybe more, to be honest. I don't even know all of them. But that's true, is that every few kilometers you drive or
mhm,
take a bus or train, people speak different languages, and I wouldn't understand them. And some places, you that's their main language. Like they speak mostly
mhm,
um, that language, and sometimes they speak English or Hindi, but sometimes some people don't. They just speak their own
yeah,
mother tongue, and that has been interesting to
mm,
communicate with. It would just be sign language, and if you're buying
yeah,
something from a person, I was in Kerala many many
mm,
years ago. I was trying to buy this local fruit. It's all over India, but it's, I guess, jackfruit. It's what it's called.
mhm, yeah,
Really sweet, very tasty. And we were trying to buy it, and the only way to communicate and kind of even haggle, like, that's too expensive. We need to bring it down, like this one and this one, and all that.
mm,
That was funny. And but also, yeah, I don't know if I haven't traveled within India so much, especially since I moved to the US. But now with Google Translate, I wonder if it's going to be easier, especially if you're traveling in areas where you don't know their language and they don't know your language. So you just put it in and play it. Have you done that?
depends on. I have actually used Google Translate to communicate with people, but the language has to be in there
That
because
is
not every language is in there.
Especially dialects, right? Wouldn't be there, I'm
Dialects are never
guessing.
in there. So yeah, there's German in there, but I don't think there's Swiss German in there.
Yeah, that is true. There isn't, I don't think there is Kannada or Malayalam
Hmm.
in it. Maybe there. I have to check,
Yeah, I'd have to
yeah.
check as well. Yeah. But yeah, I just know that not every language of the world is in Google Translate, but there's plenty of them. So yeah, I've had really cool conversations with people where it was constantly using Google Translate because I didn't speak their language, they didn't speak mine. But the thing is, when you do that over chat or you just sit with someone, it's fairly easy. But
Hmm,
when you're trying to really socialize in a group, it's not going to work.
that is true. It's a difference between like a one-off conversation with
Yeah.
somebody you meet versus
Mhm. Yeah.
being social, meeting them, getting to know them, telling them your story, because you need to be articulate, right, in that
Yeah.
language. Uh,
Hmm.
it's interesting. I know a few different languages. I can speak mostly Indian languages, but there's like 4 or 5 different languages I can speak in. But when I need to articulate my feelings or my opinions about something, I switch to
Hmm.
mostly English or Kannada sometimes, which is
Yeah.
my what I speak at home. Like it's what I've learned growing up.
Yeah.
I make that switch.
Yeah. Yeah, so my ex was German, and with him it was always if he would speak Dutch with me, I would be the one who had the upper hand. But the other way around, when he would speak German and I would speak German with him, I can speak German quite well. I'm
Oh.
fluent in German, but he had the upper hand because he had the more nuanced ways. He could get much deeper into the language. So any deeper conversation we always did in English because then we neither of us had the upper hand because that's just not cool when one has the upper hand because they know the more nuanced words and they can express themselves better. So that was
Hmm.
always in English. And he spoke Dutch quite well, and same for me with German, but just not enough. Not enough to really get into the nitty gritty.
That's right. Not enough is a good point. Like there's a
Yep.
level at which you can like I can
Yes.
have conversations and I can ask for what I want is one level,
Hmm.
and another level is I can express what I'm feeling and what I want out of them, like
Yeah.
expectation wise. Uh,
Yeah. For instance, in French, I can do my shopping, but I can't have a decent conversation with anybody.
yeah.
Just
Have
can't.
you had any funny experiences with languages? Saying something wrong or
Mm, yeah, because so I'm learning Turkish for fun
okay.
because I like languages. I've learned some Swahili at some point for fun. I've learned French, Spanish, Italian, all these languages a little bit for fun, but not really. So it's just on Duolingo. But Turkish, I've gotten more serious into because I find it fascinating. But the thing is that the grammar is just different. So in English, you would say a beautiful woman. In Turkish, you say beautiful a woman, and things like that. So
Okay.
things are just
Gotcha.
the other way around. Just weird, but it makes it fun because it gives me a challenge, and I like that kind of stuff. But then trying to express myself in Turkish always goes wrong. Just always goes wrong because I'm sitting there with my Dutch, English, German type of grammar, which is fairly similar in the way built phrases are built up. So it just sounds like just funny. So people always laugh when I try to say something in Turkish, which is cool.
Yeah, good that they're encouraging and they're like, they make fun of you because do they make fun of you like, uh,
No, it's not. It's not in a negative way.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
more of a giggle, as in this sounds so funny. Yeah,
yeah.
that's okay.
Those are funny experiences, but it's great. I mean, that's the only way to learn. Imagine if there's a way to like go from not knowing any of a language and then knowing that doesn't exist. So you have to make a fool out of yourself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way.
Yeah. And I've also started trying to write some Arabic letters because I find them interesting. Because I know some people who are Kurdish from the Iraqi and Irani area, and they write their language in something very similar to the Arabic letters.
Hmm.
But then they have a few letters more, and then you have in Iran the Persian language. They have a couple of others, but also mainly the Arabic letters. So I found that really fascinating. I've been looking into that language as well. And then I found that between these three languages, where I know a little bit, mostly Turkish, but I know a little bit about the other two as well, is that so many things are similar. Like one of the things is that in each of these languages, Farsi, I'm not 100% sure. So Persian, I'm not 100% sure. But in the Kurdish language in Turkish, brown is the way they do it is coffee color instead of having a real name for it.
Oh,
And then in the whole area, the word for book is kitab or something like that. And I thought, wow, that's a whole big area where it's kind of the same. And then we have Switzerland and other countries where things change so quickly. And there it's just so similar. And also the
interesting.
way
Yeah.
phrases are built up. So in this Kurdish language, it's also that things are more like in the Turkish language because that's kind of that Middle Eastern way
Hmm.
of beautiful a woman instead of a
Yes.
beautiful woman. So it's just fascinating, really fascinating. And then we went from moving to languages.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But that's a fun topic. I mean, I guess how many languages do you know? Like, I'm thinking together we know a good number of languages.
I speak three fluently, and then I know enough to get by in French, enough to get by in Spanish. Um, I know bits and pieces of various languages just because I find languages fun. So I've
Yeah.
learned some Japanese at some point. I've learned some Swahili at some point.
Wow.
I had neighbors from Morocco, so I know a bit about that North African Arabic that in other Arabic countries they don't understand. So that's quite fun too, because it's quite a mix with some, depending on the area, either French or Spanish words. I at some point learned some Irish as well because I thought that was fun to learn.
It's
Just
amazing. Is
it's
that
just
like
fun.
9 languages? At least you know a little bit about, little bit of.
And I know Frisian a bit, but that's because that's my dad's roots.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's
Amazing.
I
Queen
think
of
we
languages, Diana.
just fun. No, not no. With Frisian, I can only read it. That's the
Okay.
funny part. It's very passive for me. I can't speak it properly or
Mm,
anything. It's reading mostly. So yeah,
nice.
that's,
I could speak also three fluently: English, Kannada, I think Hindi as well, and
mhm,
then a few other languages that I can actually even Telugu. I used to speak it where because I grew up in India in Hyderabad, which is where they speak
mhm,
that language.
yeah,
Um, it's just I haven't spoken as much, so I've kind of forgotten, but I can
yeah,
still watch something and understand. And
yeah,
then I can um, little bit tidbits of Tamil and a new language called Sanketi, which is a dialect, which is a mix of Malayalam, Tamil, and Kannada languages in India, which
yeah,
is what my husband's family speaks, and that's I just picked it up from him, and I keep
mm,
prodding him like, "What do you say about this? What do you say about that?" And it's mostly the kind of things that I've learned are funny things like. Uh, I don't even know how to say them in English, to be honest, to translate them in English. But mostly, if you're teasing each other, like
mhm,
um, like that's just how me and my husband are always like pulling each other's legs. So those are the
mhm.
words and phrases I've learned in
Nice.
Sanketi,
Yeah.
and I can't use them with my other set of my family because I can't talk to them in like, oh, just be quiet, or
Mm,
go home, you don't know what you're talking about, something like
mhm,
that.
yeah.
I couldn't say that to other people, but those are the
Mm,
languages I know. Yeah, together we know a lot, you and
yeah.
me.
And the one language that we both speak is English, and we don't have any other languages that we both speak.
That is
I have,
true. That is
I
true.
have that with several friends, which is really cool. That they speak like three, four languages, but the only language we have in common is English. That's so cool.
Yeah. What language do you think in?
I think in English, funny enough,
Oh, okay.
I dream in English as well. Yeah. I have some Dutch clients, and I realize that sometimes I'm at a loss for words. But I
Hmm.
want to keep Dutch clients because it means that I keep up with the language because we don't speak Dutch at home either.
Right. That makes sense.
So,
Yeah. I think in both languages, both English and Kannada. I think it depends on the vibe. If it's more related to my childhood, or like even in dreams, if it's related to dreams about my family, my parents, my grandparents, it's mostly my mother tongue Kannada.
yeah.
Uh, but sometimes I think also in English, just because I use it more
Hmm.
from coaching and from people. That's the common language that even within other Indian friends that I have, I don't know their language, they don't know mine, so we still speak in English.
Yeah.
So.
Makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah, for me, it's been my main language for well over 20 years. So at some point, that's just it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's been,
lovely.
it was nice. Yeah. It was a good conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me. So, as we've been talking for a while, I think we should leave it at this. And then, as your life coach, then who knows, someone might want to contact you. How can they do that?
Um, for my Facebook profile and my LinkedIn profile,
Okay,
I
cool.
have a link I can share.
Yes, please. So when you share that with me, I'll put it in the notes under the video.
Sounds good.
And then I want to thank you for joining me. And who knows, we might be able to do it another time with another topic. That would be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to. No, thank you. I had fun talking to you about both our experiences, common experiences of moving countries and different languages. Yeah, I'd love to do another podcast sometime in the future
All
for
right,
something else.
cool. Let's do it. And then for now, goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Till next time.